language gives you the key to unlock this whole other world. My name's Carl Falsgraf, and I am the former director of the Center for Applied Second Language Studies, CASLS, at the University of Oregon. I first got involved in language education at a very young age. I went to Japan at the age of 24, and I taught English there for a couple of years, and I'll never forget the first class of my entire teaching career at 8 o'clock in the morning on a Monday in Yokohama, Japan. I got up there. I didn't know anything of what I was doing. They said, teach this book. They handed me a textbook, and off I went. And about 5 minutes in, even though I didn't know what I was doing and I knew I was kind of bombing, I thought, this is the coolest thing in the world. This is what I want to do for the rest of my life. And there were plenty of other Americans and foreigners in Japan at the time. Very few of them spoke Japanese. And I could tell talking to them, they could go to the same places. They could, probably get food in a restaurant or something, but they couldn't have those kind of deep relationships with people that really shows you the kind of cultural assumptions underlying everyday behavior. And it just became my passion. I want other people to know how to do this. To make a long story short, came back, I got a PhD at the University of Oregon, switched from teaching English to Japanese people to teaching Japanese to Americans, and founded the Center for Applied Second Language Studies in 1994, directed that for about 20 years, retired, and now I am happily retired here in Eugene, Oregon. We started out, our first assessment instrument was a set of cue card, physical index cards that had little prompts on them. And we had novice low and novice mid and novice high and intermediate low and so forth. You would get out at novice low and say, what's your name? Where do you live? Whatever. If they did that, then you'd pull out a novice mid card, then you'd pull out a novice high. If they weren't able to do that, you go back down. That was state-of-the-art technology in 1997 when we first created that. With a brilliant young teacher by the name of Kyle Ennis, by the way, was a driving force behind that. We had this funny grant from basically the local phone company, and we produced this, it was a curriculum for elementary Japanese. And at the end of it, we had $20,000 left over. And we asked the company, we said, would you mind if we took this $20,000 and put it into putting this assessment system that we've developed on a CD-ROM, which was cutting-edge technology at the time. And they said, okay, you can do that. So I went down to the Technology Center at the University of Oregon, and they said, well, we could do that. We could put it on a CD-ROM, but we're almost at the point where the internet you can actually talk to each other on the internet rather than just looking at static web pages. So we managed to put together a prototype of what would eventually become STAMP. So this would have been 1999, 2000. We were the first to create an online language proficiency test in the world as far as we know. And now there's a whole bunch of them, but I think we were the first. So we met at the home of the principal of Eugene Gakuen, which is a Japanese dual language immersion school here in Eugene. Dave and Sheila had recently moved to town, and their son, Dashel, was enrolled at the school. And he said, you should come over for dinner. And there's these people who just moved to town, and we just really hit it off. They said, well, yeah, one thing we're looking into is maybe something in education and business. We really believe in education, and they had the business background. I had the education background. Boy, for better part of, 6 months or something like that, I would get on my bike from my office and ride up the hill to their house. And then we'd sit down and, talk about, how are we going to, maybe make this work. CASLS had all these tools that we thought could be useful in various ways to the field. But being in a university, we had no way to get them out to the world. And so we managed to negotiate a deal with the university where we licensed our intellectual property out to Avant Assessment. They did all the marketing and the updating and so forth. So it was a great use of public resources. We mostly worked with grant funds. And so, those relatively small grants a long time ago that developed Stamp and ClassPack and these different tools that have now been improved over the last 25 years, something like that. They surely would have died long ago. So the first time I was involved in anything other than just being a classroom teacher, and going to work every day and teaching Japanese, one of my colleagues said, well, there's this organization called the Pacific Northwest Council for Languages, and PNCFL, and you should think about running for the board because this is a good thing to do. And I thought, wow, I guess, why not? So I put my name in. Lo and behold, I got elected. And at my very first meeting, I met Anne, and she was, most welcoming and introduced herself and so forth. And there was like all this crazy stuff going on, politics that I didn't understand. And being myself, I kept raising my hand and saying, now, why are we doing it this way? And no, wait a minute, aren't we going to see a budget? And these sorts of things. And afterwards, she kind of took me aside and explained all the background, and that I was asking basically inappropriate questions, which has been my MO ever since. I think that's been my role in the field, is to ask inappropriate questions. That was kind of the start of actually getting in, outside of the classroom and advocating within the field. I'm not sure if I was the first, but I know I was the first Japanese teacher to be on the ACFL board. So bringing that perspective of non-cognate Asian languages, I think I, added that perspective and hopefully opened the eyes of some of my colleagues that, French, Spanish, and German are not the only languages that we teach here in this country. I think most of us who've taught, we've seen how learning a language can change a student's life. They end up marrying somebody they never could have, met before. They end up living in a place they never could have even visited before. This really matters, maybe even more so with all the technology that sort of, I don't want to say pretends to, but it allows some sort of superficial transmission of meaning, but I'm not sure that's really communication. And what good language teaching should be is about communication in a cultural context and able to relate to somebody you couldn't have related to unless you had mastered their language.